So it's that time of the year again where summer's around the corner, Ibiza's opened up, festival lineups are huge, and you're ready to make your next edit that's going to pop off and blow up your career. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I make all my edits and my thought process behind all of them. So we're inside Ableton with all my existing edits. So we've got Wearing My Rolex, Exceeder, both of those two are out now. We have the Calvin Harris Thinking About You, which is a collab with my Special Delivery boys, Adam Lance and Wacker, which is out tomorrow. And we also have the brand new one, which is Infinity Inc. Infinity, which is exclusive to this template, which you can now buy down below. So first things first, when coming in to make your edit, what you want to think about is, do I want to make an edit or do I just want to sample a well-known vocal? Because there's a big difference. Making an edit should almost have that nostalgic feeling and throw back to the original very heavily, just like in many of my edits that we've pulled into this project. Or you can sample a well-known vocal and put it on top of your beat or make a beat around it, but it's not necessarily an edit, it's more of a sample built around a beat that you've made. Both in their own rights are very good. Personally, I have better success from almost remixing, in a sense, in my edits, well-known tracks, just because you get that nostalgia feeling, because they may be popular tracks from your sort of childhood or teen years, and then that kind of helps people attach to your new version of them. So then once you've decided on what sort of route you want to take, you obviously want to try and find the original samples. Now, I get asked this question a lot on my Instagram of how do you start an edit, how do you think about an edit, so on and so forth. Now, the easiest way is to actually use Spotify. And if we go to playlists such as the 2000 playlists, you could then search through there. You may be able to find some kind of tune that you'll be able to edit, sample the vocals from, cut out the melody, and then build a track around that. Then you get onto the next hurdle, which is, well, how do I find the vocal and how do I find those key elements within the track I want to edit? So I've found 3 good ways to do this. One, which is the easiest way, is a splitter AI. So this is an AI software that will try and split the music for vocals, the bass and the drums. Some other ones like Lala will also split the instruments as well. Sometimes it does a very good job, sometimes it doesn't. I imagine in the near future though, this AI stuff will probably be brilliant. The next one you've got is just YouTube. You could type in, Wearing My Rolex, and you could see what comes up. See if you could find any of the original version, be able to cut anything out. And you also have Google as well. Just type in on Google whatever you want to edit, see if you can find the stems, see if you can find the acapellas, and you'll be quite surprised what you could probably find on Google. So once you've got that and once you've got decent audio files, then you can start building your edit. That should be the fairly easy part. This is actually then how to structure an edit. So when arranging an edit, the first thing you actually want to think about is your audience. If you're like me and you're maybe more used to making more underground music, you can get away with, you know, really long intros or really long sections of a track playing and all of that kind of stuff because you're appealing to a different audience than you are when making a more mainstream edit. If you're appealing to a more mainstream edit, they're probably not going to appreciate a 2-minute intro of just a kick and bass. For example, we can look at all my edits. Within the first 17 to 25 bars, which is about 30 to 45 seconds of a track, the bass comes in. So let's go to the Calvin Harris one. The Exceeder edit. And Wearing My Rolex. So by having the bass and some kind of teased elements of the edit dropping in so early, you just engage with that audience a lot quicker. You got to remember that, yes, you want this to be played out by the big DJs, which I'm sure they will. But if you're making an edit, you also want to think about the streamers as well. A lot of people won't be DJs listening to your music now if you're making edits. They're just going to be streaming your music because they like that nostalgic feeling that I was talking about in the very beginning of this video. Now, carrying on about thinking about your audience, you have to keep things a lot more interesting compared to a normal track. So if we just zoom out here and pay attention to channel 76, you can see there's actually not too many sections of a beat just playing. It often will cut away to quick fills or quick breakdowns. So the listener really engages with the track and it really keeps them on their toes when they're listening to it or when they're dancing to it when you're thinking about a dance floor perspective as well. So now we've gone over where you would find your samples for your edit, think about the structure and the core audience. We can also think about the type of edit you want to make. Are you editing a track that's a bit more upfront and punchy and more aggressive? For example, we have the Exceeder and the Wearing My Rolex edit. They're a lot more peak time compared to Infinity Inc. and the Thinking About You edit. So because of that, the breakdowns are probably going to be a lot more intense and be a bit more dramatic. So if we pay attention to the Exceeder edit in the main break, and the Wiley edit. Those breakdowns are a lot more intense compared to the Calvin Harris one, for example. So you have got to think about the context of the track that you're editing. For example, if you're editing maybe Beyonce, it might be a bit more floaty, a bit more airy. Whereas if you're editing like a 50 Cent track, you can maybe get away with it being a bit more pumping and a bit more aggressive. So now that we've gone over that, we can actually have a look inside the Ableton project file. Now, if you want to buy this Ableton project file, you can do with the link below. You'll get the exclusive Infinity Inc. edit. You'll see the exact project, see all the automation lines. There's two versions, a unmixed version, which is easier on your CPU, and a mixed version, which then you can see the plugins and the processing that I'm using to mix down the track as well. You'll also get access to some exclusive drum racks and the exact bass preset that I've used in every single edit that I've made, which is made within Operator by myself. Now, when it comes to the arrangement, as I mentioned, you want to think about the context of a track and your audience. So for this track, for example, it's not peak time track, but it's still quite punchy, a bit more of a groover, and it's probably less well known compared to Exceeder, Thinking About You, and Wearing My Rolex, which probably means that I can push it more to a more underground audience. So maybe I could get away with slightly longer breakdowns and not as dramatic build-ups and just let the sounds do the work. And you can see exactly what I mean by that. If we compare that section to this intro section of the Wiley edit, So still very similar. You can see how the structure kind of follows along similarities between all of them, but you have those little vocal chops in there a lot earlier. There's a lot more energy carrying through the Wiley one because it's more of a peak time track, and the vocal is teased earlier compared to the Infinity Inc., which is just for laugh. So if we skip forward to the breakdowns, all of the first breakdowns within every single edit I do is about 16 bars. It's more than enough the time to sort of dip the energy, bring in the well-known samples and let the sort of track breathe for a little bit, but it's not too long where you kill too much energy too soon and you may lose interest within either the dance floor or the audience or streamers that are listening to it. So we pay attention to the Infinity Inc. one. We go to the Wiley one, for example, you'll notice that I do very similar stuff, kind of cut the low end, tease the low end, filter the drums out, build it up with some snare rolls and kick fills. And this is probably a really important point that I do within all my edits and just all my tracks in general, is the release intention. Now, I imagine there's probably some deep psychological reasoning behind this, but try and think about all your sort of favorite dance tracks at least. They all have these crazy build-ups and then the release intention, and what you remember is that part in between the release and the tension. So the best example I always get is Fisher, I'm Losing It. Intense build-up, and then you get the I'm losing it, then drop. You always remember the I'm losing it part. Always. Same thing applies to all the edits. If we look here, you've got the I'm thinking about you. If we get the Excedia, watch me work it, I'm perfect. Tell you I love you, like the original. Same thing with the Infinity Inc. one. It just, you have that release almost, I guess, in dopamine or something. I'm not a scientist. I can barely produce music, so I don't know what I'm talking about there. But if there's one thing you take away from this is actually just that release intention and having that standout part of that track within that release attention. So then moving across, we go into the main sort of sections of the tracks. These bits are literally copy and paste jobs between all of my edits. Kind of have a section of what I call the groove, so like the core elements of the track. Then a short break that kind of varies dependent on the complexity and the intensity of what I'm editing. And then it drops into a vocal section. Give you context, we just listen to this. And then we go to Calvin Harris. So slightly longer break compared to Infinity Inc. Context with that track. It's a bit more airy and a bit more floaty, so I can get away with that slightly longer break. Excedia. A much quicker section because it's a more aggressive track. Then we've got the Wiley section. So after the beat just playing, so you can see that's actually a massive section of a track. So that's 25 bars, which you can literally just copy from your first drop into the main drop. And I do that across all the edits. So we keep things moving along. If we go for Infinity Inc., we have the vocal section, and this one actually breaks into the breakdown very early just because of the natural structure of that vocal. But if we go to the Wiley and the Exceeder edit, they're much more typical of what I would like to see, or what I'd normally do in an edit, where you would have that vocal section, which typically lasts 8 to 16 bars, and then you have another short break, and then it goes back into that sort of groove section that I was talking about previously. So you can see what I mean, that's the vocal section, and then we've gone back into the groove section. Same thing up here. Very similar to Infinity Inc., the natural progression of the original of Thinking About You and the nature of the vocal sort of meant it went naturally into a breakdown a bit earlier compared to the other ones. And then it's into main break territory. Main break territory is usually about 32 bars long. I think any longer than that, you're probably just going to lose interest of the crowd. Any shorter than that, it might not be as intense of a build-up that you want. Now, we won't look too much into kind of what's going on in build-ups because it's very, very similar to this one over here, the first break. It's actually just a copy and paste job. So this section is copied to this section here, slightly altered with some of the automations, and the main section of the work that's done within the main break is the part before this section here between 113 and 129. So this is what I would call the sort of space section, you know, that almost pull down in energy, and just allowing that kind of space, almost moment to breathe within the dance floor. So we can see what I've done for each of those edits within that section there. So for Infinity Inc., we've got kind of just like the kick and bass for a little bit, which is done throughout all the edits. It's a really easy way just to kind of pull back the energy. And then it's just sort of played with the vocals and the synth itself. So you can see what I mean by the space there. It's kind of just helped building that tension, just creating a bit more drama within the track. But it's really not doing a lot though. It's literally just some sound effects and some samples. And if you really wanted to have a good delve into what's going on in here, then you can just grab the template. If we go to the Calvin Harris edit, you can see that we've got this moment of space here. And then we drop into the kick and bass, and then it goes into the build-up section, which is a copy and paste of the build-up in the first break. And then just to show you what I mean with the other ones. You've kind of got that moment of space, giving it room to breathe. And then back into a copy and paste version of the first breakdown. And by copy and paste, I don't mean it's exactly the same. I mean I copy and paste that part of the arrangement, paste it there, and I just move stuff around, maybe delete a few things, change some filters up. So typically after you do that, this part should be really, really easy when arranging your next edit. As mentioned earlier, this part after your main drop can literally be a copy and paste section of this bit here. So you have sort of a section of the groove playing, a little fill, groove playing, little break, vocal section, and then you could go back into the groove section in like the other edits, or you could go into the breakdown a bit earlier like in Infinity Inc. And then that takes you up until the outro. And then the outro should be just your intro pretty much in reverse. So just to kind of polish things off and just go over everything. One, obviously find a good edit that gives you that nostalgia feeling that you know will work on the dance floor. Two, make sure you've got good quality samples. There's no point making an edit if the AI extractor is shit or you're using a terribly resung vocal. Thirdly, remember the target audience. You're appealing to a more mainstream audience when doing an edit. So think about a quicker paced arrangement and in keeping that audience engaged. And the fourth and final one is remember what you're sampling and what you're editing is the standout part of a track. It's not necessarily your really cool vocal effects or intense build-ups. It's actually the edit that's carrying the track. There we go. That is the end of that video. I hope you guys found that one useful. There's a lot of information in there to take in, so hopefully you had your notepads out for that one. As mentioned, if you want to grab that Infinity Inc. template to have a really good deep dive in how do I make my edits, then you can grab it in the link below. It's the only way you'll ever get Infinity Inc. as well, so might be worth getting. Anyways, I'll see you on the next video.